Dumped over a kale smoothie for a trust fund kid, MIT student Lance Thornton decides the only way to win fast. With his loyal roommate Dev, Lance launches CampusCoin, a revolutionary cryptocurrency specifically for college campuses, turning a petty breakup into a multi-million-dollar venture. From Dumped to Disruptor, how one MIT student built a crypto empire, or how I learned to stop worrying and love the blockchain. Chapter 1, in which our hero gets dumped and makes poor life choices. Lance Thornton was 6'3" of misplaced confidence and carefully styled bedhead when Madison Whitmore destroyed his life over a kale smoothie at the campus juice bar. "It's not you," she said, which was the first lie. "I need someone more established," she continued, which was the truth. "Someone who understands my lifestyle." By lifestyle, she meant someone whose trust fund could be seen from space. "I'm at MIT, Lance protested, gesturing vaguely at the prestigious institution surrounding them. "I'm going to be somebody." Madison patted his hand with the kind of pity usually reserved for injured birds. "That's adorable, really, but Marcus already is somebody." Marcus Vanderbilt III. Of course his name had a Roman numeral. The guy probably had a coat of arms and a family crest that dated back to when people thought bathing was suspicious. He wore boat shoes unironically and owned, Lance wasn't making this up, a yacht named Daddy's Money. "Marcus is an idiot," Lance said, which was true, but unhelpful. "Marcus just bought a penthouse in Tribeca." Madison stood, smoothing her designer dress that cost more than Lance's entire semester's worth of ramen noodles. "Call me when you can afford the zip code, Thornton." And just like that, she glided out of his life and into a Mercedes that definitely wasn't a rental. Lance sat there, staring at his own reflection in his phone's black screen, a tall, admittedly handsome 20-year-old whose main assets were his jawline and his STEM degree in progress. His humble beginnings in rural Vermont suddenly felt less like character-building backstory and more like a prison sentence. His roommate found him 3 hours later, still at the juice bar, now nursing his third acai bowl, in what could only be described as emotional eating, but make it Instagram-worthy. "You look like someone told you that Python was being discontinued," said Dev Patel. No relation to the actor, but he'd signed enough autographs that he'd stopped correcting people. "Madison left me." "For the yacht guy?" "For the yacht guy." Dev pulled up a chair, his laptop already open because, like all good MIT students, he was physically impossible of sitting somewhere without a computer. "So, what's the plan? Cry about it or do something inadvisable? What's option C?" "There is no option C. This is MIT. We only deal in binary." Lance looked at his friend, really looked at him. Dev was a computer science major with a minor in talking too fast and a PhD in making bad ideas sound reasonable. "I'm going to get rich," Lance declared. "Okay, but over time with careful investments and a solid career trajectory, or crypto?" Dev's eyes lit up like someone had just mentioned free pizza. "Oh, we're doing the inadvisable thing? Excellent, I'm in." Chapter 2, Bitcoin Dreams and Ramen Reality. Here's the thing about cryptocurrency that nobody tells you. It's basically Dungeons and Dragons for finance bros. Everyone's got opinions, nobody agrees on the rules, and there's a non-zero chance you'll lose everything to a metaphorical dragon. But Lance was desperate, which is how all great technological innovations start. That and pizza. Mostly pizza. "So, we create our own cryptocurrency," Lance explained to Dev at 3 a.m., which was the only time that conversations like this seemed reasonable. "We can't just create our own cryptocurrency." "Why not? Everyone else is doing it." This was February 2020, back when you could say things like that without people laughing you out of the room. The crypto boom was booming, Bitcoin was doing that thing where it went up for no reason, and everyone's uncle had an opinion about blockchain. "Okay, hypothetically," Dev said, pulling up his laptop, because this conversation clearly needed visual aids. "What would ours do?" "What do you mean, what would it do?" What problem does it solve? Bitcoin is for payments, Ethereum is for smart contracts, Dogecoin is for making Elon Musk laugh." Ours will be better. Better? Great. Let me just code better into the blockchain. That's definitely how computer science works. But Lance had that look in his eye, the same look that had gotten him into MIT despite being from a town where the biggest employer was a lumber mill. It was the look of someone who'd watched his ex-girlfriend drive away in a car that cost more than his family's house and decided that wasn't going to be his story's ending. What? Lance said slowly. We made it actually useful. Revolutionary! Why didn't anyone think of that before? No, seriously, what if we created a cryptocurrency that solved a real problem? Not just speculation, not just digital gold, but something people would actually use. Dev leaned back, interested despite himself. Like what? Campus transactions. Think about it. MIT has thousands of students, all of them tech-savvy, all of them used to digital everything. What if we created a cryptocurrency specifically for college campuses? Pay for food, textbooks, laundry, everything. So, a debit card? A debit card that appreciates in value. That's not how current debit cards work, Lance corrected. But what if they did? It was stupid. It was brilliant. It was stupidly brilliant or brilliantly stupid, and they wouldn't know which until they tried. They called it CampusCoin because naming things is hard and it was 3 a.m. Chapter 3, in which things go surprisingly well. This should have been suspicious. The thing about MIT students is that they're all incredibly smart, which means they're all incredibly stupid in very specific ways. Tell them they can invest in a new cryptocurrency created by 2 dudes in a dorm room and they'll ask questions. Tell them it's a cryptocurrency created by 2 dudes at MIT in a dorm room and suddenly they're all pulling out their wallets. Brand loyalty. It's not just for sneakers anymore. Lance and Dev's pitch was simple. CampusCoin would be accepted at all participating campus vendors, definition of participating to be determined later, would grow in value as adoption increased, theoretically, and would revolutionize how students thought about money. Probably not, but it sounded good. Their first investor was a junior named Ashley who had more money than sense and thought Lance's jawline was an asset worth diversifying her portfolio for. That's not how investing works, Dev whispered. That's exactly how investing works, Lance whispered back. They raised $50,000 in the first week. By the end of the month, they had $200,000 and a waiting list. By March, they had to hire a lawyer, an accountant, and a sophomore named Brad, whose only job was to say, "That's probably illegal," every time they suggested something. Brad earned his paycheck. "We can't promise returns," Brad said, reviewing their marketing materials. "We're not promising, we're implying," Lance argued. "That's definitely illegal." "What if we imply more subtly?" "Still illegal." "You're not great at your job, Brad." But Brad was right. Brad was always right, which was annoying. They had to be careful. The SEC had opinions about things like securities fraud and scamming college students. Real sticklers about it, actually. So they pivoted. Instead of promising returns, they focused on utility. They convinced the campus bookstore to accept CampusCoin, then the coffee shop, then the pizza place that everyone went to at 2 a.m. when studying stopped being productive and became performance art. And then something weird happened. It actually started working. CampusCoin gained value not because of speculation, okay, not entirely because of speculation, but because people were actually using it. Supply and demand, baby. Economics 101, which Lance had barely passed but was now living. By April, Lance had enough money to buy a used BMW. By May, he could have bought a new one. By June, he was looking at apartments in Boston that didn't have charming in the description, real estate speak for probably haunted and definitely moldy. And then Madison texted, Chapter 4, The Return of the X, subtitle, Oh No. Hey stranger, the text read, which was already a red flag. Lance stared at his phone like it had just grown teeth. Dev looked over his shoulder and whistled. Is that? Yup. The one who... Yup. And you're going to... Absolutely not. He replied within 30 seconds. Hey, long time. Dev buried his face in his hands. We're doomed. The whole company is doomed. This is how every tech bro story ends. Distracted by the ex-girlfriend, makes terrible decisions, ends up on a podcast about failed startups. That's very specific. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Madison wanted to meet for coffee, not at the campus juice bar where she dumped him, she wasn't a monster, but at a trendy place in Cambridge where coffee cost $8 and came with a lecture about bean provenance. Lance arrived 15 minutes early and spent the time practicing looking casual. By the time Madison walked in, he'd cycled through 17 different poses and settled on leaning against the wall while checking phone, which he hoped said successful but not trying too hard, and not waiting for ex-girlfriend like a desperate puppy. Madison looked exactly the same, which was unfair. She should have at least had a bad haircut or something. "Lance, you look great." He did look great. He'd learned something important in the last few months. Money doesn't buy happiness, but it absolutely buys better haircuts, a gym membership, and clothes that fit properly. "Thanks, you too." They sat. There was awkward silence. This was fine. Everything was fine. "So," Madison said, stirring her oat milk latte, "I heard about your cryptocurrency thing. CampusCoin." "Right, that's cute." Cute. She'd called his rapidly expanding financial technology empire cute, like it was a puppy or a small child's drawing. "We just secured our Series A funding," Lance said, which was true as of yesterday and still felt surreal. $3 million? Madison's stirring slowed. $3 million? Well, 3.2, but who's counting? Someone was counting. Lance was counting. Lance knew the exact amount down to the cent because he'd stared at the number until his eyes hurt. That's... wow. Madison leaned forward. "And you're what, the founder?" "Co-founder. Dev handles the technical side. I handle business development and looking pretty and pitch meetings." He'd meant it as a joke, but Madison didn't laugh. She was looking at him differently now. The same way she used to look at Marcus Vanderbilt III and his stupid yacht. And Lance realized something. He'd won. He'd actually done it. He'd become somebody, proven that the kid from rural Vermont could compete with the trust fund babies and the yacht owners. So why did it feel hollow? "We should get dinner," Madison said. "Catch up properly." "I don't think that's a great idea." The words were out before he could stop them. Madison blinked. "Why not?" "Because..." Lance paused. Why not? This was what he'd wanted, wasn't it? To be worthy of Madison Whitmore? To be the kind of guy she'd regret leaving? Except he didn't want to be worthy of Madison. He wanted Madison to regret being the kind of person who measured worth in zip codes and penthouse apartments. "Because you dumped me over a smoothie," Lance said. "And now I'm successful, and you're interested again. And that's kinda messed up, Madison." She had the decency to look embarrassed. It wasn't just about money. It was entirely about money. "Okay, it was mostly about money," she admitted. "But can you blame me? I have a lifestyle." "Right, the lifestyle. How's that going with Marcus anyway?" Madison's expression could have curdled milk. "We broke up." "Let me guess, he was an idiot." "He was an idiot." "Huh." Lance stood up, leaving his $8 coffee half finished because he could afford to waste $8 now, and petty gestures felt good. Maybe next time, date someone for who they are, not what they have. Just a thought. He made it halfway to the door before the guilt hit. Lance Thornton, soon-to-be tech titan, undone by his Vermont upbringing, where people were polite even when they had every right not to be. He turned back. "Look, Madison, I'm sorry. That was harsh." "No," she said quietly. "It was accurate. And I'm sorry too. For what it's worth, I am proud of you. Really." "Thanks. That actually means something." "Friends?" "Maybe someday, but not today." Lance walked out feeling 10 feet tall, which was impressive considering he was already 6'3". Chapter 5. The Empire Strikes Back. The Empire is Lance. He's striking back at poverty. CampusCoin exploded. Not literally, Brad was very insistent about proper server maintenance, but figuratively, in the way that tech companies do when they catch lightning in a bottle and possibly some regulatory attention. What started as a campus experiment spread to Boston University, then Harvard. The Harvard kids were very snooty about being late adopters, then to colleges across Massachusetts. By fall 2020, they had over 100,000 users and a waiting list of universities wanting to integrate their system. Lance hired actual employees, people with business cards and LinkedIn profiles and everything. Dev got to build a real development team, which he celebrated by crying in the bathroom because, "I'm managing people now, Lance. I have reports. What am I supposed to do with reports?" Read them? That's your solution to everything. The office was a converted warehouse in Cambridge, all exposed brick and open floor plans that said, "We're innovative and we spent too much on interior design." But it was theirs. Lance Thornton, kid from Vermont whose dad fixed cars for a living, had an office with his name on the door. He called his parents every Sunday, like always. "So you're really doing this computer money thing?" his dad asked, like he did every week. "Cryptocurrency, Dad, and yes." "And people pay real money for fake money?" "It's not fake money, it's decentralized digital currency that, you know what? Yes, people pay real money for fake money." "World's gone crazy." "Yes, it has, Dad." "Your mother's proud of you." "What about you?" There was a pause. "I don't understand a damn thing you do, son, but you're working hard and you're honest about it, so yeah, I'm proud too." Lance hung up and pretended there wasn't something in his eye. Chapter 6, in which our hero meets a worthy opponent, and she's really annoying. Her name was Riley Chen, and she was going to destroy him. Not literally. Again, Brad was very concerned about threats and litigation, but in the way that competitors do when they're smarter than you, faster than you, and more charming in pitch meetings. Riley had launched CoinCollege 3 months after CampusCoin, and it was better. Faster transactions, lower fees, better UI. Everything Lance's platform did, hers did smoother. "We're cooked," Dev announced, staring at his laptop. "We're not cooked. We're medium rare. We're getting there." "Will you stop with the cooking metaphors?" "We're being slow roasted over the open flame of competition." They were at a tech conference in Boston, one of those events where everyone wore startup t-shirts and exchanged business cards like Pokemon. Lance had been scheduled to give a keynote speech until Riley Chen's company announced they'd be there too, at which point his keynote became a panel discussion. He first saw her during the morning sessions, holding court near the coffee station. Everything in tech happens near coffee stations. She was maybe 5'5", with short black hair and the kind of confidence that came from being the smartest person in the room, and knowing it. "Lance Thornton," she said, extending her hand. "Riley Chen, I'm your competition." "I know who you are." "Good. Keeps things interesting." She had a smile that was probably illegal in several states. "Looking forward to crushing you in market share." "That's very aggressive for 9 a.m. "I'm aggressive at all hours. It's my brand." And that should have been it. Typical tech rivalry, posturing and positioning. Except Riley was funny and smart, and when she presented at the panel, she didn't just talk about technology, she talked about accessibility, about bringing financial tools to students who'd been excluded from traditional banking. She talked about kids like Lance, basically, kids from small towns who worked their way into big universities and needed systems that worked for them, not against them. And Lance realized something terrifying. He liked her. "We're doomed," Dev said, appearing at his elbow. "You keep saying that, because it keeps being true. You have that look." "What look?" "The look that says you're about to make this complicated." "I'm not going to make this complicated." "You're absolutely going to make this complicated." Lance approached Riley after the panel, which was either brave or stupid, the Venn diagram of those two qualities being a circle. "Good presentation," he said. "You too. The part about democratizing finance was especially strong. Almost made me forget you started this to impress your ex-girlfriend." Lance nearly choked on his overpriced conference coffee. How did you... MIT's a small campus. Also, Madison's roommate's cousin is friends with my VP of marketing. 6 degrees of separation is more like 2 degrees when everyone's on LinkedIn. That's concerning for privacy. Welcome to the digital age. Riley grabbed a Danish from the breakfast spread. For what it's worth, using heartbreak as entrepreneurial fuel is very on brand. All the best founders are running from something. What are you running from? The expectations of my tiger parents, who think computer science is just a phase before I go to medical school. She bit into the Danish. Your turn. What are you really doing this for? And don't say the ex-girlfriend. That's the origin story, not the motivation. Lance considered lying. Then he considered that Riley would probably see through it, and that lying would be worse than the truth. I want to matter, he said. I grew up in a place where nothing happened, watching people work their whole lives just to stay in place. My dad's worked at the same garage for 30 years. Good man, hard worker, and he'll never be able to retire. I want to be different, to build something that lasts. Riley studied him. That's either very noble or very sad. Can't it be both? Most things are both. She pulled out her phone. I'm going to do something inadvisable. What's that? Give you my number. We should get dinner. You're my competitor. So, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates had dinner. It's practically tradition. They spent most of their relationship suing each other. We'll save that for second dinner. Riley was already typing his number into her phone. You free Thursday? Lance absolutely was not free Thursday. He had meetings stacked like Jenga blocks, a call with investors, and a deadline on their new security protocol. Thursday works, he said. Dev, watching from across the room, just shook his head. Chapter 7. Dinner and Other Terrible Ideas. Thursday came too fast and too slow, which should have been impossible, but apparently was how time worked when you were nervous. Lance changed his shirt 3 times. Dev watched this process with the expression of someone witnessing a car crash in slow motion. It's not a date, Lance insisted. You're changing shirts. I'm evaluating options. You've evaluated 5 options. It's a date. It's a business dinner. You're wearing cologne. I always wear cologne. You absolutely do not always wear cologne. Last week you came to a board meeting smelling like energy drinks and desperation. That was one time. But Dev was right. Dev was always right, which was a really annoying pattern. This was a date. Or date adjacent, date-ish, a business dinner that might catch feelings if nobody was careful. Riley had chosen a Thai place in Cambridge, the kind where the menu warned you that medium spicy would hurt your feelings. I ordered for us, she said when he arrived. Hope you like it spicy. How spicy are we talking? The waiter asked if I was sure 3 times. I took that as a challenge. The food arrived and it was delicious and also possibly a war crime. Lance's eyes watered. Riley looked completely unfazed, which was both impressive and terrifying. So, she said, casually eating food that could strip paint, tell me about CampusCoin's expansion strategy. Are you trying to steal our business plan? If your business plan can be stolen over pad thai, you have bigger problems. She had a point. They talked shop for the first hour. Blockchain architecture, user acquisition costs, regulatory compliance. Brad would be so proud. But somewhere between the spring rolls and the mango sticky rice, the conversation shifted. Why computer science? Lance asked. Because I'm good at it. And because it annoyed my parents, which was a bonus. That's it? Riley set down her fork. You know what I love about code? It's honest. You can't fake it. Either it works or it doesn't. There's no politics, no nepotism, no but my dad knows a guy. Just logic and effort. That's very idealistic. Says the guy who started a cryptocurrency to prove his ex-girlfriend wrong. When you say it like that, it sounds petty. It is petty. Doesn't mean it's not valid. They closed down the restaurant. Then they walked along the Charles River, because apparently that's what people did in romantic comedies, and also in Cambridge, when they didn't want the evening to end. I should hate you, Riley said. Because of the competition? Because you're everything I'm supposed to be competing against. The tall, handsome guy who talks smooth in pitch meetings probably gets taken seriously just for existing, while I have to work twice as hard to get half the credit. That's actually a fair point about systemic bias in tech, right? Riley picked up a rock and skipped it across the water. But then you go and be genuinely smart and driven and kind of funny, and it ruins my whole narrative. Sorry? Don't be. She turned to face him. I'm going to crush you in market share. I'm going to crush you back. Good. Riley smiled. This is going to be fun. And then she kissed him, which was definitely not part of any business strategy Lance had ever learned. Chapter 8. How to run a tech company while distracted. A tutorial. Dating your competitor was either the best or worst idea Lance had ever had, and he wouldn't know which until it either made him happier or bankrupted him. Both, Dev said. It's going to be both. They kept it quiet at first. Not secret exactly, but not announced on TechCrunch either. Riley would come over to his place, the nice apartment in Boston, not the charming one. They'd order takeout and argue about encryption standards and cryptocurrency regulation, which was apparently Lance's idea of foreplay now. You're wrong about proof of stake, Riley insisted, stealing one of his dumplings. I'm not wrong. You're just stubborn. I'm stubborn? You spent 20 minutes yesterday explaining why your user interface was better. Because it is better. Your logout button is on the wrong side. That's intentional design. They were both breathing hard, glaring at each other across the coffee table. Then they were kissing again, and the cryptocurrency debate could wait. CampusCoin and CoinCollege continued their rivalry in the market. Every time Lance's company announced a new feature, Riley's would counter. When she expanded to the West Coast, he moved into the Midwest. They were locked in an arms race of innovation, and it was honestly the most fun Lance had ever had. This is sick, Brad said during a board meeting. You're both sick. This is like if Steve Jobs and Bill Gates had a weird competitive flirtation. They kind of did, Dev pointed out. That's not helping, Dev. But the company was thriving. By the end of 2020, CampusCoin had 300,000 users across 50 universities. They'd processed over $10 million in transactions. Lance had moved beyond promising startup to legitimate business, which came with all sorts of new problems, like tax implications and a board of directors who had opinions. The board wanted him to acquire CoinCollege. It makes strategic sense, his lead investor explained. Combine your platforms, eliminate the competition, dominate the market. You want me to buy my girlfriend's company? I want you to make sound business decisions regardless of personal entanglements. Lance called Riley that night. So my board wants to acquire you. Romantically or professionally? Professionally. Romantically, I think we're doing okay. Very smooth, Thornton. He could hear the smile in her voice. What did you tell them? That I'd think about it. What would you say if I asked? Riley was quiet for a moment. I'd say you should do what's best for your company, and I'd respect that. And then I'd probably be furious and heartbroken and start a new company just to compete with you again. So, no? So definitely no. But I appreciate you asking instead of just making a play. I'm learning. You're growing. It's very attractive. Chapter 9. Everything falls apart. As it must. The problem with building something successful is that other people notice. And in the world of cryptocurrency and finance, noticing often came in the form of regulatory attention. The SEC sent a letter in January 2021. Brad turned white when he read it. This is bad. How bad? Remember when I said things were probably illegal? You say that about everything, Brad. Well, this time I was right. Turns out, in their rush to innovate and disrupt and all those other verbs that tech companies love, they'd maybe, possibly, potentially violated some security laws. Nothing criminal, Brad was very clear about that, but enough to trigger an investigation. We're not shut down, Brad explained to the emergency board meeting, but we're under scrutiny. No new expansion until this is resolved. No new features. We're in holding pattern. For how long? Lance asked. Could be months, could be years. Years. Lance had built an empire in 18 months, and now it might all freeze because of regulatory paperwork. Riley's company got a letter too. Different issues, same general theme of you're moving too fast and we have questions. It's not just us, she told him over wine at his apartment. Half the crypto space is getting hit. They're cracking down. So what do we do? Hire lawyers, cooperate, wait. Riley leaned against him. And maybe admit that we got lucky, that we moved fast and broke things, and sometimes the things you break matter. That's very mature and reasonable. I'm a mature and reasonable person. You threw a stress ball at your CTO last week. He said my code was fine. Fine? Like I'm some amateur? Lance kissed her, cutting off the rant. We'll figure it out. Promise? Promise. But promises were easy. Keeping them was harder. Chapter 10. The Valley. The metaphorical one, though also maybe Arizona. The SEC investigation dragged. Lance hired lawyers who charged more per hour than he used to make in a month. They filed paperwork, attended meetings, explained blockchain technology to people who still thought Bitcoin was a video game currency. The company was stagnant. Not dying, Brad was very clear about that distinction, but not growing either. The employees got nervous. Some left for other opportunities. Dev stayed, loyal to the end, but even he was stressed. Maybe we should sell, he suggested one night, both of them working late in the empty office. To who? Riley's board probably still wants to buy us, or we could find a larger company, take a buyout, walk away with money and sanity. You want to quit? I want you to stop looking like you're going to spontaneously combust from stress. Lance's phone rang. His dad. Hey, Dad. You sound tired. It's been a long week. Long year, you mean? His dad sighed. Your mother's worried, says you don't call as much. I'm sorry, I know, building your empire. I get it. A pause. But Lance, what are you building it for? What do you mean? I mean, I've worked the same job for 30 years. You know why? Because I like fixing things. Because I come home tired, but satisfied. Because it's mine. His dad's voice was gentle. If you're doing this to prove something, you already proved it. If you're doing it because you love it, then fight for it. But make sure you know which one it is. Lance hung up and stared at the ceiling. The office that used to feel exciting now felt like a prison he'd built for himself. I don't know if I love this anymore, he admitted to Dev. The company? Any of it. The competition, the growth metrics, the board meetings where people talk about maximizing shareholder value. I just wanted to build something cool. Now it's all lawyers and paperwork and... You wanted to matter, Dev interrupted. And you do. CampusCoin changed how thousands of students think about money. That matters. The rest is just noise. When did you get wise? I've always been wise. You've been too busy being dramatic to notice. Chapter 11. The Plot Twist. Because every good story needs one. Riley's company got cleared by the SEC in March. Different structure, different legal framework. She was free to grow again, while Lance was still in regulatory purgatory. Congratulations, Lance told her, meaning it. Thank you for not being weird about this. I'm being very weird about this internally. Externally, I'm supportive boyfriend. You're good at that. Riley took his hand. I have something to tell you. That sounds ominous. My board approved a purchase offer. Not for your company, for you. Lance blinked. I'm sorry, what? We want to hire you. VP of Strategic Development. You'd keep your equity in CampusCoin, but you'd work with us on expansion, user experience, all the stuff you're good at. You want to hire me to work for my competitor? I want to hire you to work with me. For us. Riley's expression was earnest. We could do more together than apart. And you'd be free of the SEC stuff. That's on your company, not you personally. I can't just abandon CampusCoin. You wouldn't be abandoning it. Dev can run it during the investigation. You'd still be on the board. But Lance, you're drowning. I can see it. Let me throw you a life raft. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. Work with Riley, let someone else handle the regulatory nightmare, actually sleep for more than 4 hours a night. But something nagged at him. I need to think about it, he said. Chapter 12. in which our hero figures out what he actually wants, finally. Lance walked. Not to anywhere specific, just around Cambridge, past MIT, past the juice bar where Madison had dumped him, past all the landmarks of his transformation from nobody to somebody. His phone buzzed. Madison, of all people. Heard about the SEC thing, her text read. You okay? Been better. Want to get coffee? Actually as friends this time. Why not? He had nothing to lose at this point, except more time. Madison looked different. Her hair was shorter, her designer clothes replaced with something more practical. She smiled when she saw him, and it didn't have that edge of calculation he remembered. You look terrible, she said. Thanks, I've been working on it. They sat. Coffee was ordered. Somehow it felt more comfortable than their last meeting. I'm sorry, Madison said, for how I ended things, and for how I approached you after. That wasn't fair. Water under the bridge. No, it's not. I was shallow and materialistic, and I turned our relationship into a transaction. She stirred her coffee. For what it's worth, Marcus was miserable too. Turns out when you date someone for their money, you end up with someone who thinks money is a personality. That's very philosophical. Therapy. Lots of therapy. Madison smiled ruefully. I saw you and Riley at that tech conference last fall. You looked happy. Like genuinely happy. Not I'm rich now happy. I was happy. Am happy. I think. I'm confused mostly. About Riley? About all of it. I built this thing to prove I was worth something, and now it's successful, and I should be thrilled, but instead I'm just tired. Madison leaned forward. Can I tell you something from the perspective of someone who learned this the hard way? Please. You were always worth something. The company didn't make you worthy. You built the company because you were already driven and smart and ambitious. Those are your qualities, not your balance sheets. It was such a simple thing, so obvious, and Lance had completely missed it. I'm an idiot, he said. You're a work in progress. We all are. Lance's phone rang. Dev with news. Chapter 13. The Resolution. Or, everything actually works out. Who knew? The SEC investigation was resolved. Not dismissed, Brad was very clear about that, but resolved. CampusCoin had to restructure, pay some fines, implement new compliance measures. But they could operate. They could grow. We're back, Dev announced to the team, legally and everything. The office erupted in cheers. Lance felt relief. Not triumph, not vindication, just relief. He called Riley. I can't take the job, he said. I know. You know? I know you. You're not a VP. You're a founder. You need to build things, even when they're hard, especially when they're hard. Are we okay? Are you kidding? This is the hottest thing you've ever done. Very principled, very attractive. You're ridiculous. You love it. She was right. He did. Chapter 14. 1 year later. The epilogue that's actually a new beginning. CampusCoin merged with CoinCollege in a deal that shocked everyone except Riley and Lance, who had been planning it for months. Not an acquisition, a merger, equal partnership. The combined company, they called it UnifiCoin because naming things was still hard, became the largest student-focused cryptocurrency platform in North America. Lance ran business development. Riley ran technology. Dev ran operations and occasionally mediated their arguments about logout button placement. Madison got a job at a nonprofit and started dating an accountant named Steve, who was really nice and kind of boring in the best way possible. Marcus Vanderbilt III bought another yacht. Lance's parents visited the new office. His dad wandered around, looking at the screens and the whiteboards covered in incomprehensible technical diagrams. Still don't understand what you do, his dad admitted. I'm not sure I do either sometimes. But you're happy? Lance looked around. At Dev arguing with the development team, at Riley presenting to investors with the kind of confidence that made venture capitalists open their wallets, at the company they'd built together, the one that started as a desperate attempt to prove his worth and became something actually meaningful. Yeah, Lance said, I'm happy. Then you did good, son. That night, Lance and Riley sat on the roof of their office building, watching the sunset over Cambridge. You know what's funny, Riley said. What? You started this whole thing to impress your ex-girlfriend. Thanks for the reminder. But you ended up with something better. A company you're proud of. Work you actually care about. And me, obviously, who is way better than Madison ever was. Obviously. Riley leaned against him. What would you tell yourself? The version of you from 2 years ago who was sitting in that juice bar planning to get rich quick? Lance thought about it. I'd tell him that he's enough. That he doesn't need to prove anything. But I'd also tell him to go for it anyway, because the journey matters more than the destination. That's very inspirational poster. I'm a tech titan now. I am required to say things that sound good on inspirational posters. Fair point. Riley kissed his cheek. For what it's worth, I'm glad you tried to get rich quick. Otherwise, we never would have met. Best terrible decision I ever made. Here's to terrible decisions. They clinked their coffee cups. Because it was 9 p.m. and they had work to do. Because that's what tech founders did. And looked out at the city they'd conquered. Lance Thornton, kid from Vermont, had become somebody. Not because of his company or his money or his success, but because he'd learned who he was, what he valued, and who he wanted to be. The rest was just details. Profitable, legally compliant details. But details nonetheless. Epilogue. UnifiCoin went public in 2023 at a $500 million valuation. Lance and Riley got married in Vermont at his parents' place. Dev was the best man and made exactly 0 speeches without mentioning that time Lance changed his shirt 5 times. Brad ensured all the proper permits were filed for the wedding. Marcus Vanderbilt III was not invited, but sent a gift basket anyway. Madison came with Steve the accountant, and it wasn't weird at all, which was nice. And they all lived profitably ever after. The end.
I love making these videos for you. If you liked this story, then please like, subscribe to my channel, and switch on the notifications for more entertaining stories. Please also leave a comment for any story suggestions.